You run an amazing business. Very, very interesting.
So Srimandir app today has roughly 3 crore installs. 3 million people use it every single month.
How do you go from 0 to like 10,000 downloads after that?
Growth was not the first objective. The first objective was, can we find a usage that people will relate with? And I said, but why? He said, Punya milta hai.
Amazing.
So Shani Shingnapur Mandir, it's the most popular Shani Mandir in India. On Shani Jayanti, they said 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh people would have visited them. 30,000 people participated online. When I first launched the Sri Mandir app,
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. On this episode, we have Prashant Sachan, who is the co-founder of Apps for Bharat, which is a very unique business. They have an app called Sri Mandir on the app and Play stores that has more than 3.5 crore downloads. And in this episode, I talked to Prashant about building an app-led business, the growth, the engagement, monetization, and the various nuances in all of this. Prashant is an experienced tinkerer. He's been building for the last 10 years. And he was, in fact, the co-founder of Trell, which is a social commerce company, just a while back. So we discuss, how do you execute in a fragmented space? How do you bake in user delight at scale? How do you build a strong moat for your business? So on and so forth. This was a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure you like it. So let's get started. Hey Prashant, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
absolutely, thank you. Good to be here.
You run an amazing business, very, very interesting, very unconventional, not something that we encounter, every day, right? So there's many facets of the business itself and your journey that, I want to dig deep into and, uncover some insights, right, for our audience today. But something that struck me is that, you've been a tinkerer, builder for the last 8 or 9 years, right? You've built and shipped many different apps and so on. We have an audience that is obviously interested in entrepreneurship, being a founder, starting a startup, etc., right? So from all of these different journeys that you've had, from the apps, projects, and startups that you've built, what are 2 or 3 ways that, someone listening to this can get started and build something significant?
First of all, thank you. I think when you are thinking of starting something, I think there are 2 ways you can do it. One way is there is some action in the space and you feel it's an interesting opportunity as a capitalist to go and build in the category and maybe make some monies.
Capture some of that.
Right. You may or may not relate with the problem statement. It's a business case and you go and build for that business case and so on. There's another set of thing that one can do, which is, you feel that there is something that needs to be solved. There's a larger sense of purpose. And there could not be companies in the same space that you can look at and so on. And it's more of a first principle way of solving a problem statement that you strongly feel about, that you have come across and so on. So these are 2 approaches. I think what's very, very important in this whole journey is, as you go on to build it, I think I personally feel that if that drive is there, that, hey, there is a problem statement or there's a user whose life you would want to make easy and whatnot, you can approach it structurally, I would say, instead of thinking a lot about, hey, my solution would be this, that, and in any of these cases, right? I would, so in cases where you don't have parallels, what I would recommend to people is try to start somewhere. And once you start somewhere, run a few experiments, I think data and customer feedback guides your way. So anyone who is listening this as has been thinking about something, and I would say carve out a small budget, put together a team of friends, put a small prototype, code, no code, all is okay. And I think once you put something out and once you hear from people who could be using it, I think that's the biggest learning that could take you either way. It could motivate you to go deeper, or it could be like, hey, doesn't make sense for me. Let me try something else.
Right.
I honestly am someone who can tell from my own experience, for example. So this is 2020, and I was exiting from my previous startup, and I thought that, hey, I should go and continue building. And I'm someone who always had this ambition of building something for the masses. And I feel if in this lifetime I could build something which has a population scale impact, that would be a fair accomplishment, I would say. And when I started thinking about what should I go on and build, I was thinking of the space and the problem statement that I should go after. And in this case, I took a structured approach. So I was like, hey, what are the problem statements, or what are the user behaviors, not problem statements, that were existing offline and have not really moved online fully yet. And I was tinkering on many ideas. And I actually come from this small village near Kanpur. And I myself have grown in a family which is fairly religious. So I was like, devotion is one very deep need that offers hope, mental reinforcement to people. And I was like, it is worth attempting, because when you look across, at that point in time, this is 2020, there were many apps on the Play Store, but I think the Indian consumer who had that need deserved a lot better. And I was like, if I can put together a good team and maybe go in deeper and try to figure something out, it could lead me somewhere. So I thought devotion should be moved online like every other category has. And I then started experimenting. So instead of, so often I feel, Roshan, when you think of it as a person who is an analyst, for example, you could think, hey, you could come up with hundreds of ideas on what could be built in devotion, right? So I did not get caught at that particular point in time. I was able to filter a few ideas based on certain frameworks, and the frameworks was whatever app I'm building has to have certain frequency. And I looked at the offline behaviors, structured them, and said that, hey, these are some of the key offline behaviors that I can solve for. And I ran few experiments, and those experiments gave me the answer. So and net, if you think about this, right, it would be an investment of 8-10 lakhs in total to be able to figure out the initial answer. So I would say, if I were to do it again, I would again follow the same approach. So yeah, I think
awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great starting point to find a good idea, right? What is happening offline that can be digitized? Any other sort of domains or directions in which you can find great ideas? Paul Graham has this whole essay on like how to find good ideas for your startup, but any other that you've encountered?
See, I learned something about company building. I think it would be so I graduated in 2014, and this is my 10th year. It has almost been a decade since I've been trying to build something. And I feel when I was building my previous company, I started that in 2016. I thought in 3-4 years I'll get lucky. I'll build something, it will scale and will either sell or will be profitable, whatever, right? Every founder thinks that way.
Right.
What I realized was, company building is a really, really long game.
Yeah.
And unless and until that drive is not there, and drive could be anything, the drive could also be just money.
Yeah.
So I feel that purpose, that drive is important. And hence, I personally would not pick an idea that I'm not personally passionate about, because I feel there's a short chance of creating an outcome which is go and play the long game, keep solving it with a lot of intent and drive. And if the direction is right, approach is right, you may end up somewhere. There's a high probability. So I would rather pick something on which I can play the long game. I can where I'm personally having that connect or sense of purpose and whatnot, and I would go on and build in such cases, I would say. Of course, there are many other ways where you can identify an idea, right? You could look at the current trends. You could look at So this is one, right? You can look at trends on what's happening in India in a certain sector, find out categories or parallels and see what you can do there. Another approach could be you see what's happening in China, what's happening in US. Is there a localization opportunity? And you can play on many arbitrages, for example. Let's say I can build something similar at a cheaper price. I have cost advantage and whatnot. So there are many approaches. But I'm of the camp where I would say that unless and until you don't strongly connect with something, you don't have that drive fizzing. If that drive fizzes out midway, it's even more painful, I would say. So I would rather choose something which I feel I can give my 10, 20, 30 years and maybe happily retire. I would rather choose that kind of problem statement, I would say.
No, I think that's a fantastic point, right? I mean, you definitely have to relate to the idea that you're working on, because it's always harder than you think it is.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
You have to persevere, and if you don't have the juice to kind of persevere, I mean, you will give up for sure. Right? And B, I think like entrepreneurship itself is such an odd pursuit in a way, right? I mean, there are plenty of easier ways to make money.
Absolutely.
Like probabilistically speaking.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you are going to like devote 10 years of your life to something, right? But I mean, might as well pick something that you are kind of passionate of.
Absolutely.
At least, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing that I've been like toying with is the fact that, I mean, an idea is not an app and an app is not a startup. Right? All ideas are meant to be apps, and not all apps are meant to be, startups.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you are perhaps in college or just out and you are tinkering, does it make sense to think of something as just a project and let's try it out and see where it goes right? Or do you think that, someone has to have that foresight to say that, I'm going to build a sort of a business and then work backwards? Which one do you think you would suggest?
See, I think depends on where you are in life. For example, if I'm a college student and I'm thinking about maybe building an app and just test it out. And I feel these are all great learnings, and these all great learnings of building something, see how it works, trying to acquire your first 1,000 users, see it not work out or see it work out. All of these learnings stack up, and these learnings are rare. No books, no podcast can teach you that.
No jobs will teach you that.
Exactly. Actually. When you build something, when you ship it out and you see why is no one using it? And when you scratch your head and
I'm familiar with that feeling.
No, I'm serious. When you start thinking about that, hey, I built something, and you feel the whole. So often what happens is when you think, and I'm talking about a young college grad, right?
Right.
And you put something out, and you're like, hey, let me build this, and I feel it's a crazy idea. I feel the whole world should use it. It is the next whatever. We put it out, and you feel that, hey, why are people coming on just the login page and not logging in? Why, when they log in, why they do few actions and exit the app and uninstall? And that data or that customer feedback hits you so hard on the face that when you rebound, these are step changes in your life, I would say. You then learn things, and see, I feel there are many ways of learning. This is one interesting way. Let's say if your people, the audience who is listening to this, right? It's fine if you are not getting a business idea which you think is going to change things. There are two ways of building it, right? Bottom up and down, and top down. For example, we're talking about bottom up. I have an idea, I test it out. Those learnings will stack up, and when you will use those learnings to do the next iteration and next iteration, or maybe try in a new category altogether. You'll use all of those learnings, which is your moat as a founder, because you have seen and which is your intellectual moat, I would say. I think the other approach. See, I think it's so there are many examples in our case, right, where we have seen both the models work out. In some case, someone starts saying that, hey, this is an interesting category. Thinks very top down. Thinks of the business, and product plays a small part in that. And there's a lot of enablement around the product that happens. Such businesses are there. And then there are certain businesses where you pick an app, that app goes on and become large, and then they go and transcend into becoming a business. So I think either of the approaches are fine. What I would suggest is um, the answer lies in a lot of attempts and iterations and failures,
Yeah.
and those learnings are learnings of a lifetime, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, one of the things that we look at is like the type of founders we
Yeah.
host and the kind of businesses they run. One thing is that a significant number of founders we've hosted, maybe 30% or more, like I would say closer to 50%, are all second time, third time founders, right? This is not the first stint at starting up, right? And the second thing that we've noticed is that more than 80% of them are not working on the first iteration of that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, they went into market with a hypothesis, they pivoted to something else.
Yeah.
Right, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the classic, got spurned by consumer internet and pivoted to ended up in SaaS kind of guy, right? I mean, so a lot of the conversation today is going to be about building a successful app-led business as such, right?
Yeah.
So you've been building multiple of these apps and so on, right? What are some similarities you've noticed among the more successful apps, right? I mean, what are like 2 or 3 things that you notice among the guys who really hit it out of the park?
See, I think if you have, I would rather answer it in a certain way. So, for example, you have a certain thesis. The question that you are asking is, how do you validate whether this idea is working or not?
Yeah.
And here's a process that I follow. So I feel there are many signals that you can use. But the first signal is there a small set of people amongst the set of people that you might have gotten on your platform to try it? Do they find some value? Is there some delight? And is the delight deep enough? So I think that's the first question that I always try to, and if it is consumer app primarily, I'm not talking about SaaS, I'm just talking about consumer apps essentially.
Right.
If you put any consumer app, it could be engagement led, it could be utilitarian, it could be some transactional app and whatnot. But does it solve a certain use case or a need? And does it create that wow or delight in the minds of the user? And if it does, what we need to understand is how deep is that delight? And I think the first set of answers lie there. When I first launched the Srimandir app, so Srimandir app today has roughly 3 crore installs.
Amazing.
Almost 3 million people use it every single month. A lot of people from the Indian diaspora are using the platform right now. And this company was launched in December 2020. So it has been, I would say, 3 years, around 3 years since this app has been into existence. And when we first shipped it, right, I was telling you about the 4 ideas that I shipped. The Srimandir app essentially was one of the 4 ideas, where the first one that I thought of building this category was, I thought people want devotional literature in one place. Can I curate and aggregate information in one place?
Right.
Second one was a music app, where devotional music app essentially. Third one was a Gita and Panchang sort of mix. And the fourth one was a digital shrine on your phone, and I wanted people to use it in a certain way and whatnot. Now, what I first observed was, whoever is using the app, and the way we acquired the users was we started running Facebook ads, put 2,000 rupees on marketing, and launched these apps subsequently, I would say, one after another. And what we were observing was, what is the kind of feedback that people are giving about these products? The 4th app, which was Srimandir app, had a very, very deep user wow, and the feedback was very profound.
Wait, before this, you built all of these 4 apps. Is it based on this hypothesis? You built all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you didn't try the classic, like have a landing page, see how many signups,
Yeah. So I think it's like this for us. Had I had an answer around what should I build and what's a parallel that I could follow, it was more of a we did not know what will work.
Right.
And we did not know what's the need that could become a key hook.
Right.
So I'll maybe give you a background on how did we approach this. We realized that devotion is a very, very deep category. A lot of people want these information or access to services and whatnot.
Yeah.
But we realized, we were like, hey, the biggest problem is trust problem. People first need to trust a platform and so on. And we also did not have first-hand insights on what these people will pay for. And whatever they pay for is very fragmented. They would pay for 10 things across a year. So hence, we said the first thing that we should do is we should gather people online and say if people can be gathered online, will they retain, and then test from that particular base and see what can be built next. So the first thesis was, what can I build where people gather online and demonstrate a high frequency usage, and we understand from that particular usage on what they would need later, and then transcend into from an idea to an app to a business, and so on. So the
reach, engagement,
exactly,
monetization.
Yes.
That all.
So when hence we said that let's just try these initial ideas where we feel that we can drive engagement and gather people online. And when we tried these 4 ideas, the first thing I chased, like I told you, right, was this user wow. And when I was reading these reviews, I realized that for the Srimandir app, people were saying great things about the app. They were saying, hey, thank you so much for making it. And it was many lines of comments about the app, which I thought were very profound and deep. And that was my first moment. Second moment was what
I think at this point, I want to say that the app is rated 4.5, right?
Yeah.
Still, I think your scale.
No, yeah. So I think it was 4.8-ish.
No, which is pretty phenomenal, is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, but
at that scale,
I feel 4.5 is bad. Yeah. I keep on telling my team, I think it should be back on 4.8. There were certain systems that we had built regarding our gamification, which were not working on certain days, and then the people got pissed. They're like, hey, why it's not working and whatnot, and we lost some rating there and so on. It should get back to 4.7, 4.8.
So, I mean, earlier we used to shoot for just about a 4 sort of rating. I mean, this is a new benchmark. Yeah, sure.
So that's there. And then, the second thing I call is a recall test. Whoever is using the app, and it is early days, right? And you don't have much budget for marketing. You get a user and call them after a couple of days and see, do they remember the usage? Whatever you marketed and whatever they perceived, is that in sync?
Right.
And that's the initial test. The second initial test, which will give you some sense on whether it's landing or not. The third part is what I will call as, is there a set of people which demonstrate very high quality early retention, which is where you see something where people are coming back on this particular app regularly. Is a certain segment which is finding that usage and whatnot. And if some of these things align, you might. And these are the qualifiers for you to go to the next step. So for us, the other 3 apps we sort of disqualified because they did not stand out on some of these parameters. Yeah. This particular app did, and hence we took that out and we continued building on top of it. Right. Just to tell you, right, I thought that this app was fairly gimmicky because when you are living in a Kormangala, Indranagar, and you are amongst the top 2 million tech professionals, you start thinking a certain way that, hey, this is how the people would use products and whatnot. Yeah. But I from that whole journey, right, I was like, hey, aggregation of literature might work, but why would this work? And the feedback surprised me. People said that, hey, this is smooth experience. Yeah. Darshan is important for me. I come through this app and I connect with my God. I check in, and that was a use case which is like, wow, this is interesting because I never thought it that way. And it took me by surprise. But I thought that this user cares about the product. And then I kept on chasing what all things they kept on asking me to build, add. And that's how my journey started in this company.
Yeah. I mean, so when I logged into the app as well, I mean, it was a little bit of a different experience, which I mentioned as well, because I'm, of course, used to doing the puja in person, right? So I was pleasantly surprised when I clicked something and then there was, a bunch of marigold flowers fell on Ganeshji, right? So certainly interesting, right? But so I come from the SaaS world where where your next million or the next 10 million is going to come from, right? You have a finite list of prospects and you figure ways to get to the next 10, 100, right? You don't need millions of customers, right? I think one of the things that, people generally find intimidating about building a consumer internet business is that the fact that you may need tens of thousands or millions of users, B, you have no idea where the next batch of folks are going to come, and see like why they're going to stay and why they're going to leave, right? So many of these things are such ambiguous questions, right? Yeah. So let's talk about your growth levers. I mean, you did your test on Facebook ads and so on. I mean, clearly something was working. You spoke to a bunch of people. How do you go from 0 to like 10,000 downloads after that, and then the next order of magnitude?
Yeah. So I think we were very clear about our priorities. So we realized that we have limited set of people. And growth was not the first objective. The first objective was, can we find a usage that people will relate with? What is that usage story? What is it that people will relate with? They'll keep using it and so on. So the question for us was, what should we build which people will appreciate? So hence we said, we'll forget the part around growth and we'll offset that growth part to, let's say, a basic performance marketing where we'll get users with a certain proposition. And then we would want to evolve the user journey and just keep going deeper on the user journey and see where it takes us and whatnot. So the first 10,000 installs were mostly paid. What we also started seeing was people who were loving the platform, they were actually inviting more people. So we started seeing, it started with 20-30% people inviting more people, and that number grew over time. 40-45% of the installs became organic without us doing anything. It was a function of user feedback, user love, people sharing the app with other people saying you should try it and whatnot. But what we essentially focused on was, when people come on the platform, what is that? What was that acquisition story? Which is, what did I tell them? I told them there's a content platform where you can get darshan, literature, music, bunch of things I told them. And then with that story, which was broad, I wanted to see, what does the activation story look like? So when people come on this, does the acquisition story and activation story match? What do people relate with? What do they try? And when that activation story plays out, by activation I would mean that some of the key hooks that we thought might have worked, how do people engage with those key hooks? And once they do that, I wanted to understand, what does the initial engagement look like? By initial engagement would be, why would they open the app the second time, third time, fourth time? And then mid-scale engagement, I would say, which is, why would they open the app the 7th day, 10th day, 15th day? What's that reason? And just that particular funnel we kept solving. That, why we should install the app? Okay, fair, you installed the app, now you come on the platform. How do you engage with my key hooks? And my key hooks were, you come and engage with Digital Temple, or read some literature, Panchang, or engage with content and whatnot. That was my key hooks. And then I wanted to figure out enough reasons where you should keep coming back. And I would say that was the part that we were extremely, extremely obsessed about. And because we knew if we are able to solve that, what we'll have is this rich information and data that will actually help us take this company forward. Because what we did not know, Roshan, then was who these users are, what they'll pay for, and so on. Because the obvious answers for all of these things would be, people, when you think of devotion, will say ki, sell agarbattis. Or you say that, hey, donation is the answer. But those are not the best of the answers. There are enough number of ways where you can build a very meaningful business, where you can provide access and convenience to people, be it information, be it services, whatever you can provide them, right? So we were like, can we find a deeper answer to what are the pain points that we can solve, and start with this, I would say, cookie that we give to the user that, hey, use this cookie and be on the platform and keep using it. I would want to understand from you what all you would need from me so that I can build it over a period of time.
Right.
And then go in deeper on the journey. So for us, because we did not have benchmarks, that process sort of we had to follow, because we could not copy from anywhere.
Right.
And so hence the question for us was not that, how would I get the first 10,000 installs or 1 lakh installs? I segregate the two parts. I said, I would want to first find a proposition where people come and engage, where people come and pray online. When they come and pray online, do they come repeatedly? And when they come repeatedly, I would want to understand from them, can I build something for them which complements this journey and they'll pay for this? So for the longest time, the growth was something that we did not actively solve. We solved for the engagement levers, engagement loops, and now the economic engine. And we are in this phase now where we are going to hyperscale this. And that was the method that we followed. And it sort of worked for us because of the kind of business we were in, or the kind of problem statement we were solving for.
Amazing, right? I mean, because it's fascinating to me that you focus more on the engagement and retention and not so much on the acquisition side of things, because you famously, about these growth loops and so on and so forth. The idea is to decrease the CAC as much as possible and then increase the time spent on the app, and people look at all these quantitative sort of metrics and get very happy about things and so on, right? So your idea was like, okay, even if I have 10,000 people, I want to really understand like why people are engaging and what is that next hook and hook after that.
So think about this, right? What's my ticket to win? My ticket to win is, if this category were to be built right, entrepreneurs 10 years back would have built this.
Right.
I was understanding there's something fundamentally not available about when it comes to insights, when it comes to learnings about this particular category, this particular market. And my journey will be far more rewarding if I'm able to build that understanding. So that understanding, that learning as a team was the first and foremost goal that we had. That is there something that we understand about this user, which no one else does, which is not documented anywhere, and build that knowledge base. Because we were in it for the long game, and that was the approach we followed.
Right. No, I'm guessing that you're looking at a bunch of these quantifiable and qualitative, both quantitative and
Absolutely
qualitative
both.
metrics, right? Again, now reading from this data, abstracting the insights that are actually useful for you is an art and a science by itself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because if in India, if you ask 10 people, they'll have 12 opinions about something, right?
Yeah.
So how do you is there a method to that?
Okay. So, I think there are both the ways of understanding this. Let me just, so it depends on what are you solving for. So we realize that certain use cases demonstrate better retention. So for example, we realize that the literature is once in 2 weeks sort of use case, because you might need it on important tithis or dates, but you might not consume daily. You might consume daily, but you might be a different persona, which is slightly elderly, has a lot of time with them, and would want to engage and read daily. And because Hinduism is a very non-regime faith, so usually people across the regions, across ages, practice it in different ways depending on how much time do they have.
There are different sampradayas.
Exactly. Yes. So for us, what was very, very important in all of this was, how do we thoroughly understand that what are the patterns here, and then build on those particular patterns. So for example, we realize that if a user does a certain action, his likelihood of returning on a weekly basis is this much. If a user does a combination of certain actions, we were able to understand that this user is likely to come back 4 to 5 times a week. And from those patterns, I'll give you an example, right? So one method to identify what we should build also came from this, where we build these normal engagement hooks. And one of the user was something who was anyway opening the app every single day. We were looking at this whole illness data, where what you do is you plot number of people who come on just 1 day in a month, number of people who come on 7 days or 3 days, 4 days, and so on, and a number of people who would come on every day of the month. So we were looking at people who come on every day of the month. And at that point in time, the number of people who were coming every single day was roughly 8-10% of the MAU, which is of 100K people who were there on the platform.
Wow.
10,000 people were using it every single day. And then I thought, let me just understand what is it that they are liking in the app, which is making them come every single day. So I was talking to a user on the phone, and this user said that, hey, I do this, and he gave his reasons. And I said, but why? He said, punya milta hai. So it's, we can call it like good deed points.
Right.
And we're like, interesting.
Wait, so this is before you guys launched the
No, so we had
coins and
yeah,
so
this is
on and
before,
so
yeah,
forth?
exactly.
Punya mudras.
Exactly,
Oh, okay.
yes. And this user was like,
Awesome.
punya milta hai. And then we were like, what if we give you this punya on the app? He's like, I would love it. So
amazing.
So we said, let me just put these coins as a XP points equivalent, where as you engage, you just keep on getting these points.
So you gamified the whole thing.
Gamified the whole thing. And it was, see, the point being, what we have to understand is this, every faith is gamified.
Right.
Every faith is gamified, right? Where, and it's also, gamification is an interesting way to make people keep moving forward, because we like that. So in Hinduism particularly, right, you do a lot of good things because you keep on gathering these karma points basically. And these karma points are essentially this currency in your bank, which will give you massive rewards in terms of good things happening to you and whatnot. And
so next life you're born
I think it's not just about next life. It's also about, if you are a good person, you would assume that good things will keep happening to you.
Of course. Yeah.
So we said, let's just incorporate these karma points or punya mudra points on the app. And we saw the opposite behavior of the people actually increased.
Right.
They loved collating it. And
Yeah.
those points did not have any meaning. There was no meaning to those points. But they still kept on collecting it.
Yeah.
And we realized that these are just simple insights, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you more points on this one, right? We went to people and they said that, hey, what we want is, I would want to start my day by looking at the face of the God. So they said, can you create an alarm for me? Similarly, people came to us and said that, hey, this is how my day looks like. Can you just solve this one problem for me? That, hey, can you tell me that if this is the day, this is what I should do? A lot of these feedbacks came our way. Now, some we have to discard, some we have to think deeply about. But as a builder, you have to try to read between the lines. That who is this user, what he wants, test things out. So that was one part. And so we looked at usage of certain features and combination of usage and how it yields retention, how it yields high frequency use cases, and then also kept on looking at these subjective insights and kept trying to marry the two and so on.
Right.
And that's how the whole platform evolved.
Amazing. I thought that was a genius idea, by the way, right? Because I think it's similar to the stepper challenge and so on, right? I mean, I don't know why people find it. I mean, it's a good thing, but people find that motivation to do 10,000 steps. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The other thing I like about the app, and perhaps, I mean, this is the line of thinking which has led to all of that, is that I've told you, I mean, I've used like Astro apps. I've used apps that give updates on Ekadashi, for example, and so on, right? But when I look at, Sri Mandir, I mean, it seems super comprehensive. Like there's anything and everything possible on that, right?
Yeah.
So your roadmap was kind of built out this way?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what. So today Sri Mandir stands for these three things, which is Darshan, Chadhawa, and Puja. I'll explain what these two things are, right? So this was the August 2022 when we were just an engagement app. And people were using the app for free because it had a lot of engagement or information sets aggregated for them, curated for them. And we are a business, right? And we thought that, can we build something which is helpful for the people, where they would want to, which adds meaning to their life, and for the convenience that I create for them, would they be willing to pay? And we tried multiple things. What we did was we launched digital monetization, essentially. We will the digital shrine that you had, I'll help you customize it, or some premium content pieces I brought in for you, and you can pay for it to use. So this was the digital assets that we created that people can pay for and use. The other set of things that we tried was where we said that, hey, is there something that these users need? Because we think they trust us because of the kind of user love we were getting. Let's just understand what do they need. Now, one user came our way and she asked us that, hey, every single Friday or Thursday, I keep on putting some money in my home shrine. And whenever some of my relative would go to a shrine that we believe in, let's say she told me that there's a Mansa Devi shrine in Haridwar that she believes in, she would want to give that stack of money to that relative and say, can you offer chunri at the temple on my family's name, on our behalf? So this user asked me that, hey, I believe that you might have people there. Can you do it on our behalf? So what Chadhawa is today, Chadhawa is a way where...
We call it Kanike, basically, in Kannada.
Okay. Chadhawa is where you offer goods to the god as a way to show your devotion and love towards them. And you, if you just think about this, right? 200 million people in India do it on a daily basis in their homes or local shrines and whatnot. And there is, of course, a very large affinity to these large temples and pilgrimage that they have, but they don't have that access. Can we give them back that access? Can we give them that convenience? So what Chadhawa is, we help you make those offerings at a temple of your choice that is on the platform. And we give you a feedback where in that feedback, you will see a video where the offerings are made, your names are taken and everything else. And it is offered at a cost, which is similar to the cost that you will pay at when you go to that particular place, which is, let's say, a basket of flowers will cost you 50-60 rupees. That's what it costs here. Now, this is Chadhawa. The third one is Puja, where we realize that people want to participate in some of the pujas, most pujas that they would do at their homes, or the frequency of going to a pilgrimage is lower. So, but there are enough number of things that you would want to do at these pilgrimages, which you can't today because you are in Mumbai, Seattle, wherever you are, right? Can I give you that particular access? So people are participating on these pujas, which are being offered to them at 1/10 of the cost, and what you get back is a recorded or a live video of that particular puja. Also, you get a prasad box and souvenirs and whatnot. I think these are very strong value adds that the platform provides to them. So Shri Mandir today is darshan, chadhawa, and puja, and that's the wedge that we have entered the market with. People are asking us for more things that we can do for them, which are essentially deeper experiences, and we are working towards building them. So that essentially is the spectrum in which we are operating it today, and that's what we are trying to solve for at this point.
Right. Yeah. Very valid points, right? I mean, so now you're talking about like this whole logistical layer to your business, right? And as tech folks, I mean, we are kind of averse to that, right? I mean, you want tech software. Ideally, I don't even want to like interact, but then like, let the money come into the bank via credit card, etc. Ideally, right? But then now you're talking about logistics. You're talking about like it's not a bits and bytes business anymore. It's like you're moving physical stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What was there any skepticism on that? Because you have to build real stuff now.
See, I think that's where the customer obsession comes into play.
Right.
I think the first thing that, if you look at our values that we have, the first value is customer obsession or the user obsession. And I think our job is to build for the user need. And whatever the user needs, our job is to serve it in the finest way, in the most transparent way. And whatever it takes to build it, I should build it. I feel earlier I had this bias that it has to be only product led. It has to be this.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel, as a founder, as a team which is building it, why do you bring in that bias? You should not. Your job is to serve that. See, as a creator, your job is to solve for that particular need, do right by the user, and do whatever it takes to serve him well. Now, if that requires you going and doing some ops, that requires you building a new app or whatever tech you would want to build, you should do that. Right. That and that's, I think that's something that drove us, right? We even today feel, right, whatever we need to do as Apps for Bharat, as the team that is building this Shri Mandir app, we would do that because there is this deep commitment and deep value engagement that we have towards our user that, hey, we feel you, we know that it's an important thing that you need in your life, and let me do whatever it takes to make sure that you get it.
Amazing. Yeah. And that is really the moat that you have, right? I mean, which is a significant moat given the number of temples and deities and rituals and so on and so forth that we have, right? Even if you cover like a significant small percentage of these, I mean, it's like a huge value add to the section of folks who really like abide by that.
I think there's one more thing I would want to add, right? I mean, if you're talking about the business model innovation for that matter, right? We understand few things about this particular user, right? So if you think about this, right, we actually very carefully designed this particular platform. If you think about how do we monetize, right? And there are many people who are trying to copy us. What they don't see is the structured approach that we have taken to be able to solve for user love and user retention. I'll explain what do I mean, right? There's a Chadhawa service, which is at $1 price point. Population scale proposition. I want to offer a basket of flowers at a certain temple. I'll get you to do it at the cost that you would pay when you go to that temple. And I would want to, and today, for an average transacting user in a month, there are 2.2 transactions that a user does on an average. If I were to remove people who drop after the first transaction, that number will go to 2.9 or roughly 3, I would say. So three transactions, Chadhawa transactions in a month. Now, this is similar to what companies observed in the food delivery era, where an average transacting user transacts 3 times or 2 times or lesser earlier in a month. Now I feel this, which is a population scale, low price point, high frequency use case, when coupled with a puja, which is once in 3 months sort of use case, which is a higher price point proposition, but lower than what you would pay in the offline world, for example. Let's say at 1,000 rupees, 1,500 rupees, you would pay that, right? You couple that, right? People would come and trust your platform by trying that dollar price point service, and they feel this company is real. They're not
Yeah.
a fly with the night kind of operator, and they would come and engage with you. And those users will go and say, hey, this also, by the way, offers this and this. Let me try that. So that's my sampling service,
Yeah.
which today is CM2 positive.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So I'm
At a dollar price point.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. Because see, I think we do batching. So because the kind of volume that we have, so the order volume that we get at a certain temple, it helps us optimize the whole processes and operations. We batch these orders and we hyper optimize on the time that we engage with the Panditji on, how much we pay and whatnot. So the Panditji makes a lot of money
Right.
for the time that he spends with us.
Right.
And because we batch these things, we also are able to generate sizable margins
Right.
in a batch, I would say. And then you couple that with the puja service, like I said, which is a higher dollar value, slightly medium frequency. And then all of this has a free content platform. So what happens is my month 6 or month 12 transacting user retention on the app is very, very high. I would not want to share the numbers right now,
Right.
but it's actually very, very high.
Yeah.
And that triad as a strategy is, I think it's a winning strategy.
Yeah.
And that's the approach that we're following.
Yeah. No, you're literally building for a lifestyle, right? I mean, if I think about it,
Yeah.
The user behavior is already there, and
Yeah.
you've completely like enabled this via digital. Right?
So I feel, Roshan, we are a spiritual tourism company. It so happens that this spiritual tourism company, people can participate digitally through a puja, through a chadhawa, from wherever they are. It gives them access and convenience. We would want to do more things for this whole segment, for example. So I, as a company, I, as a platform, help you connect to your belief systems and value systems, particularly around devotion. And we help you experience it at the comfort of your homes, or later on, when you are there, we'll also help you there, because we are solving for the whole value chain.
Amazing. Yeah, I've been. I've been thinking of like suggesting this to my mom and like checking her reaction, right? Because so I donate to our Kuladevta almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a monthly thing, right? Some days I get a receipt, some days I don't get a receipt, right? It's very like as in the transparency is not there, right? But whereas I mean, when you go there and let's say you're taking your usual rice and milk and jaggery or whatever, you can actually see it in action,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That people are being fed the prasad and everything,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But this is amazing. I very closely relate to what you're talking about, and all of these places also, right? I mean, like these are not like commonly easily accessible also, most of them, right? I mean, like Kur, for example, it's raining cats and dogs right now.
Right now.
Absolutely impossible to sort of venture out and so on. And there are places like, for example, Amarnath and, Tirupati and so on and so forth. Tirupati, I mean, like a minimum waiting would be like at least a half a day,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the last darshan I had was like around 5 hours, right? 4 to 5 hours. So yes, I mean, it's not the actual physical thing in front of the the god as such there.
See,
but
I think a very good point you're making, right? I think I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah,
here, right?
yeah.
I feel I'm not replacing that behavior.
correct.
So you would go there once in a year, once in
Yeah.
5 years. You might be consuming all of that information through a live stream. But devotion has always been participative in nature. By participative, I would mean you see something and you respond. So we realize that response layer is not existing. So the Chadhawa and Puja is a response layer to it.
Yeah.
And the same devotee would be
Yeah.
more connected to that particular. So I'll give you examples, right? There's a partner temple that we have. I would not name them, but they are making enough money through the platform by doing this particular service digitally that they are. So one temple told us that they are creating this, and this is a temple which has a lot of historical and cultural significance, but I would say is not supported in enough ways, right? And a platform like us has helped them tell their story to a larger audience. They have told us that they are getting a higher number of footfall because of the kind of push or the kind of information we have spread, and that money that they have generated, they are using it to put together a shed. I know that shed might not be the 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 biggest infrastructure development they can do, but I think something is better than nothing. So I think that's the kind of impact we're trying to create.
That's exactly what I was thinking about as well, right? I mean, so like the reason why I donate to my Kuladevta there, of course, I mean, there's a whole story to that and everything, which we don't have to go into now, but it was a like a process of realization. But the other thing also is that, look, I mean, you donate to all of the larger temples anyway, right? And they will, I mean, they have enough mass of devotees there that it'll run, right? I mean, they're not, they're not starved of expenses. I mean, they're not starved of funds for their expenses and so on, right? But if you go back to your village temples, your local deities and so on and so forth, they could really use resources, right? Absolutely use resources. And if you think about the way your ancestors lived, right? I mean, I'm not even talking about 5 generations back, even 3 generations back, the maximum like rituals and everything would happen at your village deity, right? That's where everything happened, whether it was like a namkaran, or whether it was even like the first invite to a wedding or whatever it is. So I think I'm really excited about that some of these lesser known places, so on, which may not have the kind of resources that a Balaji temple in Tirupati will have, will also get a chance to sort of use these resources.
So we are essentially, that's the goal, right? Our first goal is all the temples which have historical and cultural significance. Can you enable digital access and convenience for people? And I feel whichever community they're able to build, the proceeds will help them in many ways, I would say.
How do you go and build these partnerships with these folks, right? Because I would assume they're from of course, WhatsApp has made tech kind of ubiquitous for people, WhatsApp and YouTube, right? My mom listens to bhajans on YouTube. She doesn't play a cassette anymore, right? But when you talk to these folks, I mean, what is their initial reaction like, and how do you kind of get them on board?
See, I think thanks to COVID, people. So this is already happening, but at a small fragmented scale. So for example, you would go to a temple and you would get the number of a Pandit ji, and you'll say, okay, Ekadashi mein you get a puja done for me, and he'll get on a WhatsApp call and get it done. But think about this, right? How many people in India would have that WhatsApp number? And how many people can he serve in a very unstructured way of processing and so on? We feel, can we make it more structured, make it more homogeneous, where the entire community of temple trust get benefited from this, and can we structure it for them? So when we go to them, so I think the journey was not this way. When we started, we found out. So think of this, right? The top 10 temples in India are, I would say, category A. Then let's say 11th to 30th will be category B, and then 30 to 100 will be category C, and so on. So we went to a category C, category D temple, and went to them and said that, hey, this is what you guys are doing. There are enough people on the platform who are asking, who might like this particular temple because of the story it has. And every temple also has this aspiration that, hey, we are here today, but I would want to serve more devotees, for example. And people are now open to the idea of, and thanks to a lot of platforms which have come in, right, they are seeing the digital adoption happening, and it's very, very real. So when we tell them that, hey, people sitting in a Mumbai or in a Bangalore, and your temple is in somewhere, let's say in Ujjain, and it's the 3rd or 4th most important temple in Ujjain, for example, I can get more people to come and participate. So the first set was where we had a lot of users on the platform. We got these category C, category D temples, demonstrated enough demand for them, and enough demand which was sizable. I'll give you a data point, right? We used that data and went up to category B temples and said that, hey, this is a temple which is lesser known, has this kind of significance. You guys are there. Would you want to try this? They tried that. And data was the one which was game changing in here. I'll give you 2 data points. There's a temple called as Hanuman Temple in Ayodhya, which is, I would say, as important as the Ram Mandir. There was this Hanuman Jayanti where they said that 3.5 lakh people visited that shrine. And the temple could at max serve 1.5-2 lakh people, because beyond that it becomes too dense, and there are enough number of risks, I would say. Now, I'll give you a data point. In Hanuman Jayanti, 25,000 people participated digitally by making offerings at their temple. And if you just look at the proportion, right, I'm talking about 7-8% of the offline footfall being served online.
Wow.
I'll give you another example.
Wow. That's
So Shani
crazy.
Shingnapur Mandir
Yeah.
is in Nashik, right? And it's
Yeah.
the most popular Shani Mandir in India.
Yeah.
On Shani Jayanti, they said 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh people would have visited them, and they got capped out because of course, space limitation and
Yeah.
whatnot. And we have very deep partnership with them. 30,000 people
Wow.
participated online.
Wow.
We're talking about 20% penetration.
Crazy.
We are building systems with them where we can get to 1x, which is if 1.5 lakh people could go there, and there 1.5 lakh people can participate digitally. That's what we're talking about.
Amazing.
And think of this, right? The amount of, and the good part is, all the employment that we have been able to generate for the priests there is substantial enough where they can now offer more rewards, compensation, incentives, and it's sizable income that they make.
Yeah.
And they can use that to be able to give education to their community kids, to give health insurance and whatnot. It's an income source that never existed.
Yeah.
And now the beauty will be that every temple in India is capped, right? On a given day, you can only hold these many people. And there are people, and think of the people who are elderly, people who are handicapped, people who are poor, who could never go there. Can I give you some glimpse of that experience that you have been striving for? So if you think of the entire spectrum, there is enough value in what we are creating today. And I feel the win is going to be when I feel something like a chadhawa, something like a puja, all of these would be very, very large use cases because they're part of daily behavior. If I'm able to build a very trusted way which is smooth and convenient and whatnot, that just might be magical, That might be magical. It's a new way of your mom waking up and making a small offering.
Yeah.
That small offering, often we as people in this capitalistic world think of in certain way. But let's understand what it gives to your mom. She feels blessed. She feels that there is this Almighty who is taking care of me and my family.
Yeah.
And that mental reinforcement is very, very important. I feel in a country where you don't have enough resources, enough infra, and we're a growing country, a lot of things are developing and growing and whatnot. Still, if you think about this, right, we are actually doing okay. I was in SFO 3 months back.
Yeah. I mean, it's
God, that economy is so rich, such good infrastructure.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening there,
dude, it's crazy.
and just think about us, right? Think about us, right?
Yeah.
So despite having all the hardships that we have, right?
Yeah.
Still people are sane, working hard, that there's a hope that we as a family will do better at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I think these fabrics, I feel devotion is a cultural fabric.
Right.
This small cultural fabric, if it is moving a generation forward and making them to do more hard work and do more things so that they can have a better life, these small enablements, if it helps them do better, be better, feel better, what more you need?
Yeah.
What
no,
more you need?
It's phenomenal. I mean, I've had the same damn experience, right? I mean, you would imagine that, San Francisco, one of the richest states in the US, right? Per capita, God knows how much, 50,000 perhaps, right? Maybe more, right? And you would imagine this place to be rich and prosperous and, people to be like happy, lively and so on and so forth. And it was just like, when I was walking downtown and I saw these folks, right? I mean, my heart sank, man. I mean, these are folks living in the richest part of the world, right? Absolute zombies.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've seen like poor and deprived people in India. I mean, all of us have seen, right? But I mean, I've not seen that abject hopelessness.
Yeah.
That level of hopelessness. And I think like family, the kind of dharmic values that we have and so on and so forth, people don't we take it for granted, right?
Yeah.
But think about it, man. I mean, India's state capacity is like so famously starved, right? I mean, like how many police stations do we have?
Yeah.
Right? How many cases do we have like, in the backlogs in the thing? So when people like talk about all these crime statistics and everything, I'm surprised it's not 100x more actually.
Yeah.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
Right? So there is something out there,
Yeah.
right? You call it society, culture, religion, whatever it is, right? That is sort of holding us together.
Exactly. And I have this problem that, when we, so when we sitting here in Kormangla, when we think of this particular behavior, we say, oh, what a regressive, uncool behavior it is, right? I feel we have to understand the human psychology and what it does to people and what magic it creates in their mind and what, I don't know, this whole fabric of hope that they get, that they can pull closer and feel tighter. I feel it's a good purpose for me to build for. I would say.
No, it's absolutely phenomenal. I think, look at the very base level, right? And the domain we come from a very sophisticated culture and everything. So I don't want to put it this way, but the very, very base level religion is very low cost psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Calming someone down at the face of like extreme loss and like real unfortunate situations and so on and so forth, right? I mean, I hate to go on a tangent, but think about it.
No,
right?
I think
we don't know why we're here. We don't know where we're headed, right? I mean, those are like two very big ambiguities, right?
Yeah.
Right? Everything you know and love and whatever will be gone. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get into this very nihilistic sort of a framework of mind ki like, sab faltu hai. I mean, what is the point of it all?
I feel hope is a good thing. Hope is a very good thing.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more. I think we have deviated a lot from the operator part, but I think no, but it's fine. I feel this is an interesting conversation. I actually feel there is this. I'll give you an example, right? Not example. This is what I saw myself. This is COVID second wave. And my dad got COVID, fairly severe it was. He was stationed in Amethi in HL Township where he was still working. It was his last year of employment. We rushed him to Lucknow. Lucknow is 120 kilometers away from Amethi. We rushed him in an ambulance. We're not getting any beds. We somehow got some private clinic or private hospital to give him some admission. Then what happens was the doctor says that, hey, you have to get remdesivir. And funnily, I also got COVID. So I was undergoing this fever and whatnot. And I had rented a Zoom car. So from the hospital to this central center, it was roughly 25-30 kilometers away. So I drove with fever, got there, queued up at 5 a.m. in the morning. The distribution started around 8 a.m. There were like hundreds of people who were queuing up. And at sight, I'll tell you, right? There were people who were seated with folded hands and praying and keeping it tight. When you see that, right? This is this normal fist. And when thinking about when you are actually in a lot of pain, you clench it, right? And that, I was like, whatever this is, this is that I mean that site was crazy, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm running a startup, I have some access, whatever. That point in time, of course, everywhere in the world it was very, very bad. I thought we did very well as a nation, but still it was bad for the masses. But I feel we pushed through in whatever ways, right? And I was seeing people with folded hands and praying and crying, and I was like, if they're believing that they'll make it through, and if their relatives will make it through, that's enough reinforcement. And whatever is giving that,
right?
Who am I to judge what is that?
Yeah.
If it's working, it's working.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. I mean, so one thing I'm also noticing is like the amount of thought you have put into building every aspect of this business, right? I mean, it's so crazy, right? Because I mean, generally when, again, from the SaaS world, when you look at like consumer, right? You just say, okay, I mean, if it's a successful app, someone else will just come and build it, right? or the only way to sort of monetize and make money is advertising, right? But then what you are actually showing is that there are so many layers of differentiation you can add, right? There are products and utilities you can serve via an app and so on, right? That's awesome, man. I mean, I think we've come a long way since the last 10 years of building stuff.
And I think this is such a great time because I'm seeing so many founders building very uniquely Indian companies for unique problem statements. And I feel very proud about it because gone are the times when people used to ask us, ki, hey, can you show me a parallel in the US or China? And I feel so proud that when I show Srimandir to someone, right, people are able to appreciate that this is a unique Indian need, unique problem statement, unique way of solving it. And I'm very proud that our community of founders, believers, people who have a lot of foolish courage, they're pushing through and making it. And I feel, if you think that there is, and through this beautiful platform that you've created, I would actually say it out to other founders who are there. It's fine if you are not able to find a parallel. It's fine if you are not able to find are there any parallels for this for you to look up to and maybe get inspired from. If you feel strongly about a problem statement, it's fine if it is uniquely Indian. Just push through.
Yeah. No, I mean, so we've had quite a few of those folks solve for things like clean water, for example, here, right? Or we've had Stage and Kuku FM, which are solving again very like vernacular needs for India and so on, right? There is definitely an impetus to build for India, and also realizing that, look, I mean, India is so big, right? That there are many Mexicos and many Americas within India, right? And if you sort of divvy up these different sections and so on, it's significant enough for you to build something for that section of India itself, right? But one thing we keep hearing, right? I mean, less so now after some proof and evidence has come through with the likes of Stage and the others and your app and so on, right? Is that we keep hearing this old trope of India as a DAO market and not an ARPU market, right?
It's nonsense.
I think it's redundant at this point.
It's nonsense. I think India consumer story, the whole world is investing in that.
Right.
I think it is evolving.
Right.
People are gathering aspirations and gathering money and trying to spend on those aspirations. I think this is the decade of India, and not saying it in a hopeful way. Most of us would have read this Bloom's report, beautiful report, and many of these reports.
We had Sajid and Amal on the podcast discussing the report.
I think so. It's our time now. Indian consumer is ready. He's willing to pay for things we thought they'll never pay for.
Right.
And I think India is no longer a DAO farm. It's a DAU and ARPPU farm.
So that's the thing that I want you to quickly address as well, right? Which is that people think that the capacity to pay isn't there beyond a certain scale in India, right? But I mean, I kind of believe that Indians are cost conscious, not value. I mean, the Indians are value conscious, not cost conscious, right? I mean, if you look at, for example, like the weddings, I mean, how much people spend in villages and
I think that's
so on
nonsense.
and so forth.
That's more status seeking behavior.
Maybe, but I'm just saying, like, they do spend.
They do spend, yes.
Right?
India spends.
If it really matters to them, they will spend, right? So, and that's something that you've realized as well through the...
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, in our case, everyone, So, I'll tell you another small story. I was in Khatu. Khatu is this is town roughly 3 hours away from Jaipur. And there's a Shyamji ka mandir, which is popularly called as Khatu Shyamji. Interesting story, but it's a very North Indian belt popular temple and crazy, I was thinking that this temple would be seeing lesser footfall, but it was a Sunday. It was 45 degrees Celsius temperature. People told me that 4 lakh devotees are there.
Good God.
4 lakh devotees. Insane.
Crazy.
And I have a picture that maybe I'll send it to you and you can put it out here for people.
Yeah.
Guess the age of people who are queuing up. We would assume that the people who are queuing up would be elderly.
Yeah.
But if you see this picture, I mean, I'm hoping there's an overlay here.
Right.
So if you see this picture, you will realize that the people who are queuing up are mid 20s, mid 30s, mid 40s, young people queuing
Yeah.
up for that one darshan
Yeah.
on a very hot day, on a day where they have put sheds and they are showering water so that it is cool and calm for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are not stopping, and I think, see, it's like this. We can tag those people in any of these ways. Wow. But that's happening.
Yeah.
That's happening.
No, I mean, I had a similar experience on the Ram Mandir day as well, right? I mean, the Pran Pratishthan day. I mean, so I went out to the local Hanuman Mandir, and I half expected to find people, on the other side of 40 and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were kids, man.
Yeah.
There were kids who had, like, a few of them had bunked tuitions and whatnot and showed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, India is changing for sure, and there are good, meaningful businesses that we can build
I think
for.
we are able to see good indicators, right?
Yeah.
So companies like ShareChat, companies like Cuckoo, companies like Stage, they're monetizing very, very well.
Yeah.
Let's look at the game economy, booming well.
Yeah.
We are seeing people paying for OTTs.
Yeah.
Newer OTTs are coming to India for finding their growth.
Yeah.
So it's happening. It's happening.
All right. Let's move on to some of the other strategic aspects of building a business, right? I mean, which is like raising money, being, having enough capital, so on
Yeah.
and so forth. And you have some experience on this front, right? Like you had the Trell experience before this and so on. Raising money, 101, what to do, what not to do.
Okay. So I feel there are, of course, the usual advice around how you should structure your story and how should you articulate about your market opportunity, and depends on what stage you are. I'm assuming that you are at a seed or a pre-seed stage. Show some proof points and whatnot. I feel it's if I were to talk a bit philosophically on fundraise, right? I feel it's all about finding the right kind of partner, and people invest in people. So it becomes extremely important to talk about who you are and who your team is and what your belief systems are and what is it that you are willing to create. I feel there have been multiple opportunities in my own life where I might not be super clear about where I could get to, but I was clear about in which direction I'm willing to go and how much push I'm willing to put with all my heart and might. And there are believers, be it angels or be it early stage funds, who look at you and they can sense that thing. And it's more about, how authentically you can talk about who you are and what you're trying to build, what's your purpose, and back it up with what's the market opportunity and whatnot. And it's also about it's also about, you are meeting someone and you're asking him his money to be put onto you and your company. Just think it from the reverse perspective. Why he would put that money? It's also a business. It's not just about supporting you. It's about he is seeking in return. And also he would want to trust you. So I would say, if I were to put it the other way, in a very first principle laymanish terms, right? You were asking someone 100 rupees and saying, hey, that person is supporting you, but the larger goal is to be able to multiply his money. 2, he's putting his money on you and your team. So it means that he should be able to build some trust onto you as an individual. What all things you will say and do and show to be able to solve for those 2 problem statements. That's what fundraising is.
Right. Yeah. I think that's such an important question to answer, right? Because often I think there are more tactical things like how much should you raise, at what valuation, what dilution, so on and so forth. But really, essentially, it comes down to that, which is that if I am going to raise, like, what do I commit to in return, right? And we realized this over the last 2-3 years, right? 2021, mega bull run, everyone raised, like, everyone took in a boatload of money, right, at ridiculous valuations. And then now you're seeing like an overcorrection on that front, right? I mean, down rounds and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a hamster wheel in that sense. the other important aspect of your business is this whole app store, play store side of things, right? And we've had folks from Kuku FM, stage, and so on and so forth, and they too have been impacted by some of the Google,
Yeah.
Apple,
Yeah.
like kind of discretionary policies and so on and so forth, right? Ek to, I mean, it's extremely opaque in terms of how it works, and second, there is no real meaningful redressal for as large a market India
Yeah.
is, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I feel it's very regressive in many ways. Yeah, I think.
And not to mention the tax also.
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel
we
whatever.
call it the tax because
Yeah,
I mean, you
whatever
have
take
to-
rate you are having, right? You should
Yeah.
also understand what stage is the country in is an
Yeah,
economy.
exactly.
I feel my one line to this is, right. Even if I'm Google or Apple as a business, right, I should understand that there are many golden geese in the making, and they should not cut them open.
Absolutely.
What they're doing is they are, because of whatever take rates that they have, they're bleeding companies to death.
That's amazing, right? I mean, if you have a 30% take rate, I basically have to reinvent my business model.
Yeah.
And there are certain things I cannot do at all.
Yeah.
Like
I feel we should.
I can't build certain businesses.
I feel, and other part is right. I think these are also monopolistic advantages that some of these companies take.
Yeah.
I feel there should be better policies, better structures to be able to solve for it. And I think 30% though,
Insane.
it's nonsensical.
Yeah.
You're monetizing on every single thing on your Play Store.
Right.
And if you take away that 30%, insane, right? And what are you providing, right? We're providing a place to host and bunch of services and whatnot.
Yeah.
For which you're already charging through your other services and whatnot, right? I feel this should be solved.
Do you think like an indigenous app store equivalent will develop, or
I think
maybe like
this
a
is
long
this.
shot?
See, I'll tell you what. So it's again monopolistic firewall that they were able to put. If you would have tried any of these newer Play stores that have come, you would realize that the kind of permissions that they would, if you were installing an app from a newer Play Store, they have put too many blockers, where there are security blockers and a bunch of these things are there, right? So if you make it so hard for people to on,
It's tough.
It's tough.
I mean, just a security warning will freak enough people out, right? I mean that.
So you have diminished that possibility to a level, where it's tough to build a independent Play Store, I would say.
I think two things might happen, right? One is I think these folks will start having to independently negotiate with certain companies and so on. I think they've done that with a few
Of these
gaming
guys,
giants in the US.
Yeah.
The second is some kind of antitrust, right? Which is like these folks come and say, hey, you can't do this. You can't be the gatekeeper to a $1 trillion economy, right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially what it is, basically.
Yeah.
Right? So, last couple of questions before we let you go, right? For founders operating in this kind of a market environment, right, where it's a bit of a downturn is a understatement, right? Where it's a legit market downturn, there's been a correction and so on, right? And they've had to focus a lot more on profitability versus, let's say, growth, right? What would your advice to founders be in terms of how they should operate? And here again, like you're also a prolific angel investor. You invested in a bunch of successful companies as well, right? So looking at it from the other side of the table, I think you have both these vantage points.
Yeah.
What is your advice to founders?
I would say, build it for your own self. At the end of the day, you're building a business. You should not build it for secondaries. You should not build for the investors. I think try to create value for your users first, then your team, then your investors, and then you, in that order, and not in the other way around, I would say. So I feel whatever this whole current environment has given us are just good things. I've seen, for us also, right, we are operating in a more financially disciplined fashion. We are solving on the fundamentals. We believe that we'll be able to build a very, very large company on these fundamentals, and I think capital constraint in some ways is beautiful.
Yeah, it makes you more disciplined.
I think it used to happen, right, in our families also, right? You used to ask your parents, give me this toy, and even if they could have afforded it, right? They would dismiss some of your requests.
Right.
They would want you to rationalize some of these requests. It makes you way more thoughtful.
Yeah.
It makes you way more pragmatic, and that's what this market is like a good parent.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, for sure.
Yeah.
Any books or podcasts that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. I think I'll recommend some books. I feel as if you're building in consumer, right? I think there are few books that you should read. I think the obvious ones are quite a few that many of people would know. I think one book that I would recommend would be, it's not about, you should read Man's Search for Meaning. That's a good one.
I wouldn't have guessed that, actually.
Man's Search for Meaning is a good one, very very good one.
Yeah.
It will be good for you as a founder, and also will help you get some understanding and whatnot. I think there's a book called as Wanting. It's on mythic theory. It's a good read, very very good read. It helps you understand why we want what we want.
Right.
And I would say there's a book by there's a Octalysis book which is by Yuki Chow, which is on primarily gamification and bunch of those things around that. I think these are good, interesting reads for you to understand consumer psychology, and these are interesting reads, I would say, which I would recommend to people. And
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Prashant, this was a fascinating conversation, and I think I'm inspired enough to give it another shot. Right? Thanks so much again
Absolutely.
for sparing your time for this,
Absolutely.
and hopefully we'll host you again.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Good meeting you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Startup Operator Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll be back again with another interesting startup and another interesting founder.